Welcome to the Starting Out, a Seat on the School Board highlights presentation. What you're about to watch is a collection of comments and insights from experts who participated in 4 open to the public informational sessions hosted by the Pennsylvania School Boards Association. I'm going to start by giving a brief overview of the work of a school board, and then you'll hear from numerous experts, seasoned school board directors and superintendents who will offer up their firsthand knowledge and experience so that if you're considering running for your school board, you'll be well informed in your decision. I'm going to share with you a little bit about the role and responsibilities of a school board. This is just an introduction. There's a lot more to learn. Some key concepts of board service are as follows. The school board governs the district while the superintendent and administration manage it. Governance and management are 2 distinct roles that work together. A successful school board is more than just a group. It needs to act as a team. The superintendent, according to the PA Public School Code, is part of the governance team as the 10th non-voting member. The superintendent has a right to speak on all matters that come before the school board. Power and authority are granted to the full board acting as the district's governing body. This means that the authority of the board is collective. No individual school director has the power to make decisions or direct the administration to take actions. Most board work and all decision-making are performed at meetings open to the public. This is in accordance with PA Sunshine Act, which is our Open Records Act. Public school board meetings are where the decisions and deliberations on board business must take place. However, there are a few outlined exceptions to the Sunshine Act, which allow the board to meet in executive session for deliberation. They still will make their decision at a public meeting. The Principles for Governance and Leadership is a model that PSBA has pioneered and shared with districts for many years. It is the framework for successful school boards across Pennsylvania. I want to share with you 2 common misconceptions about board service. First, school board service is mostly attending 2 meetings a month, right? No. Actually, our survey data has indicated the average time invested in school board service was about 20 hours per month. And during a crisis, like our current COVID pandemic crisis, or during significant projects on the local level, like a capital project, a building project, boards will meet even more frequently. Another common misconception, that the school board evaluates and directs district personnel. Again, this is incorrect. The board evaluates the superintendent, and by law, this evaluation happens annually. The superintendent is responsible for directing all district staff, but also for implementing board policy. PSBA supports newly elected school directors by sending them the Essentials of School Board Service, a guide to surviving your first year. This provides an easy to read, question and topic-based guide for those who are learning the role of school board service. In this guide, we have this quote, "School boards do not run the district, they ensure the district is run well." We believe this helps frame the role of governance and distinctly define it as different from management. The district administration will be running the district on a day-to-day basis. The school board will meet several times a month and ensure that that management is happening in accordance to board policy and is reflective of the mission and vision of the district. Revisiting the idea of collective authority, the PA Public School Code conveys authority to the board only when it's acting as a governing body, making collective decisions. So the authority of the board is limited to when the board is gathered together with a quorum present, deliberating on board matters, doing it at a public meeting or in an executive session, and taking action to make decisions through a vote at the public meeting. That is where the board has authority. Any actions or meetings outside of that is not supported by the law as having authority to make decisions. There are parameters around the board's governance role. If you look at this image, you will notice that it is taken from a helicopter or some aerial transportation. I'm showing you this because it's a visual reminder of the role of governance. Governance should stay looking at the big picture rather than getting, quote, in the weeds of the district business. So the school board should really be looking to the past, to their school audit, and to what has happened in the past to say, what have we learned and how can we take that learning to make our present and future better? In the present, they're looking at governance documents that are guiding the work of the district. This would be the comprehensive plan, the budget, a facilities plan, the district goals, a strategic plan, or even the board's own goals. And the board is responsible directly for setting the district up for success in the future. How are they setting the district up to be financially stable in the future? How are they looking to increase student achievement and growth and have strong and highly effective staffing? The board needs to stay at the governance level. In this image, the board would not be driving the bus. The board would not be working on the landscaping of the house. The board would be staying in the planning and higher level view. Now, what guides the board's work? You've heard me mention several of these things. The PA Public School Code of 1949 and other laws related to the authority of the school board is what grants the authority to the school board and also provides the limitations of what the board should be deciding on and deliberating. Other things that will guide the board's decisions should be superintendent goals, district goals, and if the board has them, their own goals. The comprehensive plan, which is required by the state to be turned in either on a 3 or 6 year cycle, depending on aspects of the plan, should also be guiding a board's work and should be publicly available to the district and the community who lives in it. Some districts aim to create a strategic plan as a more streamlined version of the comprehensive plan. And the district's board policy manual also is required to be available to the public. This should guide how the board operates and also should be guiding all of the decisions of the administration and management of the district. Finally, the district budget, adopted annually, will guide the resource allocation. All of these documents should be referenced and used to guide a board's decisions. To see how these documents are guiding your board decisions, you could check on your publicly available board meeting minutes, or if your local board records their meetings, you could watch the recordings. The school board's role needs to stay as a primary focus on student achievement. In all decisions, the board should be focused on how to advance, grow, and improve student achievement. You may ask how that applies to the budget or the grounds. If you think about those things framed as how does this contribute to a safe learning environment for all students to be able to achieve and to be able to find success, that can help frame important board decisions. I shared with you about the principles for governance and leadership. I'm showing them to you now. You can see how PSBA has separated them into 7 principles, each with sub-indicators that give more direct guidance. I'm going to pause and give you a moment to read through some of these. These are also available on psba.org, our website. And I want to direct you to how this relates to the governance role. To understand the role of the school board, you need to focus on the verbs in the guiding documents for school board authority. If you notice in the principles, you will also see these in the PA Public School Code. The board approves, adopts, evaluates, communicates, and establishes. Let me give you one example to define this. The school board will approve the school calendar, but not create it. The school calendar will be created by district administration who are considering multiple stakeholders, multiple calendars, and multiple considerations. They will put together a school calendar, which the superintendent will bring before the board. The board may ask questions about how that was created and why this is the recommendation, and then the board will vote to approve. That small example may help show and demonstrate the difference between management and the role of governance. Finally, we've been talking about the board as a group. I want to share with you a little bit about how individual school directors show up and contribute to a highly effective school board. First, you need to show up with an attitude of being a team player. Remember, there's a collective governance model. Nothing happens with independent people going out and making decision. It happens as a collective authority with a vote. You need to come to the meetings prepared. We mentioned the 20 hours people invest in school board service every month. Some of those hours are in preparation, reading potentially hundreds of pages that are shared with school directors prior to a public meeting, which contain information that allow them to make informed decisions. Boards are subject to following their own procedures adopted in their own board policies. You will find those, if you follow PSBA's numbering system, in your board policy section 000, which again must be made available to the public. School directors must focus on a mindset of being fair and objective. Directors will arrive with their own experiences and their own perspectives to share, but they must adopt a mindset of making decisions for what is best for all students in the district. Again, school directors have to connect their individual vote, their individual voice to the district's foundational statements that exist: the mission, the vision, the values, the strategic plan, and the goals. PSBA encourages both superintendents and school boards to adopt a culture of no surprises. People should be well aware on the agenda of what is going to be discussed and decided at a board meeting so that everyone can arrive prepared for that discussion and to make informed statements. There will be times where an individual school director has a vote and that vote does not result in the decision that he or she wanted. In that case, we have to remember the collective team of the board, and votes should not divide the board. There can be healthy disagreement and the votes are cast, but once the vote is decided, the majority rules and the board must be able to move on without becoming fractured and divided. And finally, even though this is an absolutely volunteer role, there is no pay and there is a lot of time invested, it is a professional role. It is a visible leadership role in your community and your district. And so we recommend a strong adherence to professionalism. Thank you for listening to the roles and responsibilities. As I said, there's a lot more to learn, but I hope this was helpful in clarifying the role of the school board.
What advice do you have for anyone considering running for school director? I think I'll start with Ron.
It's always a learning process, and that's what basically a school board director is it's a learning position. And I think one of the best things that a new school board director can do is to listen. And then you find out where your niches are.
Many times people go down this road because they've gotten engaged in a specific initiative that's going on in their district, a single item, agenda item, and that sometimes prompts people to say, I'm going to now get involved in the school board. And I think you have to really be realistic. But when you get to the table, if you are successful, you are there now representing all stakeholders, not just the area that you were very passionate about, but you are going to have a responsibility for the all areas, all student achievements, all stakeholders.
Why did you run for the school board?
Actually, I ran for the school board because there was a student issue that, I'm a former teacher, I knew would be harmfully impactful to students, and I went to the board meeting and spoke. And afterwards, when the school board member suggested that I call her, so I called her. And at the end of the conversation, she said to me, have you considered running for the board? You listen. And I think that's a key component of being a good school board member, is to listening to other perspectives before making a decision.
I ran for the school board because we had an achievement gap and continue to have an achievement gap in our school district. So I was part of a parent group that was really advocating for raising expectations for students of color in our school district. I quickly learned after kind of being tapped on the shoulder to run for school board, because again, was very vocal in the community and advocating very earnestly about raising or addressing the achievement gap, realized that this is not just an issue affecting one group of students.
Thank you. David, could you give us a perspective of what a superintendent would like to see someone run for the school board?
I think we're always looking for somebody who is going to advocate for all students. I think that's really important. And someone who is not getting on the board necessarily for a very narrow issue, I think is challenging, because as the other directors have stated here in this, it's hard to do that. Like if you get on the board for a narrow issue and then you're in charge of governance of the entire school district, you may find that really confounding very quickly. I think the other piece too is that while boards do have a very important role to play in terms of the management, the overall governance of a school district, like they really aren't getting on there to manage the district, to actually run the day-to-day operational aspects of the school district. And I think it's important that people who are interested in running for school board understand that.
Let's narrow our scope to 3 key pieces that makes a successful school board.
I think being a good listener is really important.
I think if you don't do that, then you kind of lose sight on the other perspectives of someone else. I think that's one thing. I think being able to collaborate and actually be willing, right, to hear another person's perspective, trying to be devoid of emotion. We certainly want to be respectful of that at all times. And then preparation. I think making sure that you're prepared when you're coming to those meetings. Those three things, like a good listener, being collaborative and respecting, and then also being prepared as you enter the boardroom.
I think being a team player is really important, and it's part of that whole collaborative idea that the board is a collective body. So that's a really important piece, to work as a team, even if there are folks on that team that, you know, maybe politically you have opposing viewpoints with. Dissent helps boards reach better decisions. So welcome dissent and don't use it as a sword against each other. The second one I would say would be to never make your decision on how you're going to vote until after deliberations occur, because you need, and the public expects you to be open to the public comment at the beginning of the meeting and to the deliberations, hearing from your peers at the people they've talked to and the ideas they're putting forth, and really consider it. Don't just have your mind set and that's it. Be open and don't make that final decision till you hear the recommendation of your superintendent. Never make a decision without hearing your superintendent's recommendation and the deliberations of your peers and public comment. Then you're finally ready to vote. And my final item would be integrity. Always remember that you are an elected official. You are a role model for all the students in your district, and handle yourself with nothing but the highest level of integrity, and it will serve you well if you always maintain that. Thank you.
You know, some of what's been said, you know, being open and honest in your communication, be fully prepared, educate yourself on the matters at hand, and listen, definitely listen more than you speak.
How does a school board director impact the direction of their school district?
A school board member impacts their district lots of different ways. I think that taking into account, you know, maybe some direction from the community, things that like surveys that we might have done, engagement kind of activities around, you know, topics that are really important, such as if you're looking to go one-to-one, you know, all those kinds of things a school board member is going to hear from their community, and they're also going to be looking to the leadership of the administration to try to see how we can move those things forward.
I would say that first and foremost, working from a superintendent's lens, working together as part of that team of 10 in collaboration with the superintendent, and then ensuring that the district does have a defined mission, vision, and goals, and that the policies are up to date, because all of those things will impact how the superintendent and administrative team actually runs the day-to-day operations of the district, and also how they respond to the constituents. So the policy development is what the superintendent then is able to develop what they call administrative regulations off of, and then that impacts how we operate day to day, which is how we serve our students, our staff, and external constituents.
You know, one of the things that we can do as school board directors to impact the direction of the district is to make sure that it is run in a fiscally sound and prudent manner, looking to make sure that, you know, the things that the administration brings forward that they would like to do, that we can afford to do, and, you know, put it forth in the best interest of the students, to be able to, you know, give them those opportunities that that we see are you know, trending or, you know, very important to the administration and to the education of the students.
Should school boards be communicating with the public directly beyond the school district's public communications?
It's a very unique situation of an individual board member speaking on behalf of their ideas versus a board goal. And if you have a complicated issue going on in your school district, as a board member, you have to be mindful when you speak as an individual, as a parent, or as the full board member.
I think that's exactly right, Sarah. You really hit the nail. It's about the disclaimer. You have a responsibility to your constituents, but you also have a responsibility to the board and the superintendent of schools. And so that disclaimer is really important when you get, tapped on the shoulder at your local supermarket and they say, I want you to fix. Well, I'm one of 9, and I would be happy to present that issue to the superintendent of schools and see if it warrants the board action, but I have no single authority. And that's a big misconception, is that people can approach you and ask you to do something. And just to finish, who speaks on behalf of the board? Board operations for each individual district is critically important on how they function on a day-to-day way for the superintendent and his administration, but also on the way the board behaves among themselves. And I think board operations is critical to how you perform your duties at the local level.
How is the agenda set? Who runs the board meeting? And I'm going to do this as a single question. And should school directors meet individually with staff members?
Communication's multifaceted. And I'd say that, I don't want to imply that a board should ever not be a listener in any forum, in any hat. When you are hearing the thoughts and building your understanding of your constituents, building your own understanding of their thinking. It's not about your agreement or disagreement at the moment or your personal action. You should always present yourself as a listener. Ask yourself as a board member, am I potentially being a connector or a disconnector? Be a connector, connect other people's thoughts and understandings to the agenda. The best way I could say it is, as I would paraphrase it, maybe even quote it out of policy, is the agenda is built by the superintendent in collaboration with the president of the board.
Let's talk about the importance of the relationship between the superintendent and the board of directors.
It is the most essential relationship. It's really important that school boards and superintendents work together as a team of 10 and as a unified team in collectively making decisions and guiding each other as they lead the district as a team. And you need to not have it be adversarial. And it needs to be the kind of relationship where there's complete honesty and openness and really good two-way communication. If you're a school director and you hear something, you need to direct that community member, if they come to you with an issue, direct them back through the channels of the best way to address that issue, which is always closest to where the issue occurs, and then make your superintendent aware that you've heard something, so they're aware that something's brewing.
I think that people probably sometimes underestimate the culture and climate starts at the top in a district. So oftentimes people will see the relationship that exists between the board and the superintendent, and that permeates throughout the leadership team. And when in central office, that permeates down to the principals and how they perceive how the district is functioning or not functioning. So it absolutely sends a message to the entire district and the community about whether or not we have an organization that has a leadership that is functional or not functional. But I would also say that the thing that's often lost sometimes is the biggest client that we have is our students. More and more, they are actually paying attention to the relationship and interactions that they see, because more boards are now having also student representatives as part of the board. So they sit and see that dynamic and that interaction. A good, solid working relationship, and I said a working relationship, not a rubber stamp relationship, if people know what I mean, promotes a critical thinking and problem solving environment where I think the community then will say, hey, we got people who are really, really trying to be strategic and thoughtful and embrace accountability and try to give the best educational opportunities they can for their students.
I would just like to echo that I think trust is a really big factor. That team of 10, really, there's a lot of trust that needs to continue to take place, even maybe when you're challenging each other on a particular issue. So it's built on respect. We may have varyings of opinions, maybe because of our backgrounds or experiences, and in our leadership roles, right, as the superintendent and or as the board. But we have to always be mindful of how we are representing ourselves.
Yes, the trust factor is paramount. You have to trust that the administration is doing the right thing and bringing the right things to you. But your responsibility is also out there to understand and question where necessary. So you do have that full body of information to make your informed decision. Respectful disagreement is out there. I think it was said before that you don't have to have a 9-0 vote on every vote to push things forward, but you do have to respect the vote that goes through and support everything once the vote happens, and help make the district run well.
Why is functioning as an effective team of 10 so important for a school board?
People can disagree, certainly. And I will say that voting your conscience is your responsibility, but it's important for you to be able to talk through those objections that you may have with the superintendent, because maybe there isn't clarity and understanding. And allow the administration and allow the staff to explain why something that we're proposing is really important. We're going to be responsible stewards of the district's finances, but if we say that something is really necessary, we'll have the data. And if you need more information, we'll provide more information. If the board is just fractured and like if a school director wanted to just stay on their singular issue and not want to learn about all the other areas of managing a district, it's difficult then to build that consensus that we need, that even if we vote, 2-7 on something, let's say, we all agree that whatever that total vote is what we're going to go to the public on. The board voted, not I voted, the board voted to do something and to support that decision. If the board doesn't show that solidarity, it creates a lot of tension for the staff and then the students, and that makes it really hard for everybody to move forward.
I would only add that it's required that you bring your personal experiences, your skills to the board table for amplifying your position regarding a particular issue. But what's most important is remembering that the decisions that are made in the boardroom have direct effect in the classroom. And if you keep that in mind when you're doing your due diligence and your review of the issue before you to vote on, it's important that you remember that student achievement is your overarching goal. So I think when the superintendent and the administration brings you information and recommendation for the board to vote on, it's because that due diligence around the entire wheel has occurred, and that you can feel confident when you make your vote. But also understand at that time is the only time when you're a collective body do you function as a school board in the decision-making for the school district.
The team aspect of a school board and a superintendent is vital. And I think not only can a divided board cause great strife among themselves with the administration, but also in the community. If your community is all of a sudden wrapped up in who's going to scream and yell tonight, it is taking away from that overarching focus of student achievement. And I think it's so easy for school boards to get caught up in those operational issues. And, especially now when there are so many opinions on how a school is going to what school is going to look like. It's very easy to get overwhelmed by all of that, but you do have to continue to make decisions with that lens of student achievement in focus, but also keep in mind that we are setting an example for students. We want to be able to conduct ourselves professionally. We want to be able to have discourse and dialogue and perhaps disagree at times, but be able to say, the strength of a board is that we bring 9 perspectives together along with the superintendent who's representing his or her administrators. And we mesh all of that together. We debate and discuss. And then when the decision is made, you move forward. You have the opportunity to get your perspective across, to share your ideas and your concerns with your colleagues, to bring forward items that members of the community may have brought to your attention. But once that decision is made, you really do have to move forward in good faith in the best interest of the whole.
So what does a school board director spend most of their time on?
Well, I would say some of it is reading research that's provided by the Pennsylvania School Boards Association and the National School Boards Association, so that one is informed about forward trends and what's happening, going to meetings, doing background research, making sure if I have questions about the agenda, if there's information, then I call the superintendent before the board meeting. I don't like to surprise a superintendent because it's very important that that team of 10 be represented out in the community. There are also school activities that we are invited to attend. Sometimes we are invited into a classroom to see a particular project. In general, as board members, we do not show up in classrooms unannounced. That is something, but we do go into classrooms when we are invited to see a special project, especially if it's something that the board has a specific goal that they had identified the year before to see how a program is being implemented.
Just one thing to add is that I think that as part of that process, we really try to make sure that we come prepared for all meetings. There's a lot of material, preparatory material that is required. We also, if you're a co-chair of a board committee, you're meeting with your administrative liaison to set the agenda for the forthcoming committee meeting. And I think it's really important to understand that and also provide to the rest of the board both the agenda and the meeting materials prior to the meeting so that board members can ask those questions before you go into the committee meeting.
Time and effort should definitely be spent on the governance. I think a lot of the time that, at least in my experience, is reading and understanding the deliberations of the committees that I'm not on, and making sure I'm informed of all of the things that are being brought forward in the next meetings that will be put forth on the agenda. Also, part of the reading is understanding as budget time comes up, understanding the documents and just reading through everything that comes through, so you have a good basis to make your decisions. And definitely ask questions of the superintendent, the business administrator, all the way through, so you are well informed and can go forward.
Let's look at the school board's collective role in equity in your school district.
We need the resources to bring all the opportunities to everybody, whether it's digital equity, whether it's financial equity. We just need the services there, and to be able to understand, from race lens and all that, getting to that level of equity, we need to be able to understand how that is in the curriculum and work with the administration as they bring things forward to bring those resources and maybe change the curriculum or whatever to the board to be able to understand how we can make that better and broaden the scope of what we do to include everybody.
The only thing that I would just clarify is that some people really don't understand the meaning of equity. It's pretty complex, but I like to briefly say it this way. It's making sure that every child has what they need to succeed. And as by example, I would say that I love the analogy of the fence. If you have an 8-foot fence and you need every child to see over that fence, one child is going to need only a 4-foot stool. Another child may need a 6-foot ladder. The 6-foot ladder costs more money. And we're not going to give everybody a 4-foot stool because they won't all be able to see. So whatever that each child needs to see over that fence, we have an obligation as the school board to make sure that each child gets what they need, even if it costs more money for one. It's not about equality, it's about equity.
I would say that a big part of the board's role is to help build capacity to understand what is happening in our district to make sure every child and student is receiving what they need. Part of that is asking the superintendent to make sure they bring data and demographics to look at and see where we are struggling with equity and where we are being successful. I also think that it's incumbent upon the team of 10 to have the conversation about this feeling sometimes that permeates in communities, or fear, which is a real one. We have to acknowledge people's fear that someone's going to lose out. And I would encourage and say that go through an authentic process and make sure you have equity lens with everything that you do. And look at the equity toolkit that is provided by PSBA. I'm proud to say in our district, we're going through that process right now. We looked at 2 organizations and we felt that it was a really good process, and we stayed here with the state association or using them to go through an authentic process, one that's inclusive.
At a time when we're right in the middle of budget cycle in terms of already the school year has started and you'll be coming in at that time, let's talk about the importance of training and being ready for the role that you might get.
Suggest that you kind of look at last year's budget and kind of view that on the website and kind of see how it kind of is formulated and looks what it looks like. And see if you can get, more extensive, like of a couple years past and kind of compare that. I think it's important to really attend meetings without question. I've found in the past that new board members who have been actively participating even in the audience are much better than ones that have come to one meeting and then have, after they've made it through, say, the first round of the primary, and then they're gone for like till they maybe get elected, are really kind of like a deer in headlights, to be quite honest. And there's some, learning curve, obviously, but really taking that time to understand and prepare, maybe looking at the strategic plan that the district has that's been posted, anything that you can find to learn more about the district's work, what they're doing, what their goals are. Those kinds of things will be really helpful to you, in the process of taking on that position.
Right now, while you're thinking about running, go to your next school board meeting, go to your next 2 school board meetings. You're going to find a lot of housekeeping, like paying bills and just, approving the hirings recommended by the superintendent. You're going to see a lot of week-to-week housekeeping, but you're also going to see the times that the bigger questions come into play that do cause a lot of deep strategic discussion. And it'll give you a sense of what the job is, and continue to attend school board meetings up until you hire, because it's a moving train. It doesn't stop and everything start over at election time. You're going to be stepping onto a train that's stopping briefly to let you on and let the old board members off, but it's going to still keep running at a very high speed, and that'll make you more accustomed to the procedures and the flow of the meeting, and it'll also make you aware of what events the board is immersed in at the time that you take office.
Let's talk about one do and one don't as a school board director.
Don't assume you know everything and that it seems that you that the way that it looks, right? Because you're getting a glimpse of it. You're not getting maybe even some of the behind the scenes, maybe the executive sessions that have gone on, those kinds of things. So don't assume you know everything about that. Be someone that when at the end of the day, when you look in the mirror, that you're okay with how you handled yourself in that meeting, because your students are watching and your teachers are watching and your administrators are watching. And you are the face of the district at that point too. I mean, along with the superintendent.
Do speak with conviction and put forth your opinion, but if the vote does not go in your direction, then respect the decision and support that going forward. One of my favorite quotes I've heard is that kindergartners like surprises, superintendents don't. So don't surprise your superintendent. Always have that conversation beforehand.
I'm going to give you my do first. That's an easy one. And that's communicate. Communicate with everybody. Communicate with your fellow board members, not just some of them, all of them. Make sure you have good relationships with your fellow board members. So communicate with your superintendent, communicate with everyone around you. Be very open in your thoughts and your ideas, and transparent. And then my don't is, don't try to fix problems of parents and community members. And that doesn't mean you don't care. It's just that the board is the court of last resort, not the first step. So if there's an issue, they want to come to you because they know somebody on the school board. And the expectation is there that you're going to fix it. We are not fixers. We are governance, and you need to direct them to the fixers are their building principal, the superintendent. They need to go to all those folks. And if they're still not satisfied after going to the chain of command, so to speak, then certainly sending an email or a letter to the entire school board would be fine, but it needs to be after they've done all the other steps.
How does the superintendent manage the board's time on task?
I think you have to make sure that you understand as the superintendent that, you know, the board, they're a bunch of volunteers. They really are. And you're going to ask them to make hard decisions. You know, I mean, there are no easy calls anymore, are there, in the world? I mean, so the board is going to be put in a position where they potentially are going to have challenges. And so as the district leader, it is really important that you provide them with the information they need to make good and effective decisions.
Help our audience understand how the principles are used at your local level as a compass of board service, as a framework.
Well, I think it's really important. The principles for governance and leadership serve any school board by giving them a common belief system and a common guiding light to do their service. What many districts have adopted them as policy. Some do it as a resolution. At PSBA, we encourage you to do that after each election, so that, you know, you're recommitting yourself as a board to those principles. And then when you do, I encourage you to go online. There's a place to register that your board has approved either a resolution or as a policy. And when you sign up, you'll get a huge poster that every board member who voted in favor of it can sign and hang in your boardroom as a reminder to the entire board of what you've committed to. And then you use those principles to hold your peers accountable. So if somebody, let's just use one of my favorites, if somebody speaks, betrays the confidentiality of executive session, then you remind them, hey, we committed that we wouldn't do that. That's one of the principles, and we don't do that. And you use it to keep everybody on the same path.
I was just going to pick out the one part, for example, evaluate continuously. Are we evaluating our programs? How does our evaluation process play in with how we evaluate our superintendent? Are we continuously looking at our goals, our strategic plan? And for example, at every board meeting, we read our mission and a belief statement. So every board meeting, we're very mindful of the direction of the district and what we want to accomplish. And that really helps us stay in our lane and stay on track and future visioned.
Discuss the role of policies in your district.
The policy, that's the board's meat and potatoes. I mean, that's really where the board does their governance, is through creation of policy. You know, so those are opportunities where not only is it important to develop policy for your school district, although most of us utilize PSBA services for a lot of that, it's also important that the board understands the policy. So part of the review process isn't just annually reviewing, but it's also reviewing policies with the board so that they're fully aware of what the board's agreed to do as a school district. So I would highly recommend, especially if you're a new board member, if you're a new superintendent, really digging into that policy with your board and saying, hey, we're going to at least go through these and start talking about them effectively, because that really is where the board's governance lies. Really, their authority, I think, for the school district is in that policy development and also in establishing those policies.
One of the areas, especially for a new board member, is to look at the policies governing school governance and the role of the school board member. And all of the policies actually help us stay student focused and doing what's important, what's key for students, and keeping us out of trouble legally. If we have a policy and a student incident happens, then we can follow that policy. We have a policies and procedures, and it'll keep us out of legal trouble. And it helps us communicate with the community, because we can say whether we have, for example, a policy on residents using a facility. We do. Then this is the fee structure, and it keeps the board out of the angst of the community and the problems that can arise by not following policy.
What would you advise to those who are seeking office?
That's a very good question. And I think the fundamental question for anyone seeking office as a school board director is to ask yourself, why? I think it's critically important to answer that question honestly, in terms of why. If it's really just for political aspirations to have this as a resume builder, that should probably not be a reason why you're running for school board. Another fundamental question is probably touching base with an existing school board member to really understand the time commitment of a school board director. You will be spending a lot of time in meetings, but there's a lot of preparatory work that goes into preparing for meetings and a lot of reading material and thinking time that you need to give yourself as well. So those would be two of the fundamental pieces. And the other thing is, ask yourself if you're a good listener. I think it's critically important as a school board director to be an active listener, not with the thought of what's my next question, but really listening for understanding, both in presentation of materials to you, particularly as it relates to school board directed decisions you have to make, as well as listening to community members as well. So those would be some of my points of advice.
Lifelong learning. It's a continual process of learning what the process is and what is expected of a school board member, being ready to listen, but educate yourself. Go to the board meetings. Take time to review the past minutes or listen to the videos, meet with board members, meet with the superintendent, but be willing to learn and to listen.
I would say that going to board meetings is a really important aspect. I mean, if you haven't attended quite a few board meetings, you may not want to be a school director. I think it's an important thing. If you're really contemplating running for the board, you should make sure that you're going to the board meetings for a little while, so that you can actually see kind of how things are operating and what is going on, and really what is my role as a school director. I think without that information, it could be really a surprise when you actually get elected, potentially.
It's going to sound redundant here, but I personally think that I've been surprised over the years at the very few people who have attended school board meetings prior to their taking the oath of office. And I think it is my number one recommendation, because a school board is a moving train. It's not suddenly starting on the day that you take office. It's moving, and you're jumping on a moving train, basically. So it's important for you to know where it's been and where it's going. The second thing that I would say is, I think it's really important that if you're thinking about running, that you not base that decision on something that you want to change. You might find yourself very disappointed because personally you don't have the ability to change anything on your own. You would have to convince 4 other board members that this is something that needs to happen. And that's not always easy. Plus, whatever you're concerned about right now, by December, when you actually take office, may not even be an issue. So make sure your motivation is one of really wanting to make a difference for students in your community. What do you believe is important for individuals to think about when they are considering running for school board?
I think it is so important for people to understand when they are choosing to run for school board that they are running to become part of a team. I think that's one of the biggest challenges of this role. You go out as a candidate and you have to tell everyone why you're better than the other choices. And then you have to sit down and look right and look left every time you make a decision, and make that decision together, considering all the perspectives of the group. And you have to be prepared to make that transition from getting the message out about who you are and why your perspective is important, to then transitioning to becoming a part of that team of 10.
I think there's a couple of things that are important. I mean, one is the time commitment. People falsely believe that it's just the time that you spend in the meetings. And there's lots and lots of background work, particularly if you want to be effective. You need to do the background work, and that can include learning all of the materials and laws and mandates, but it also means continuing to talk to people in the community and really being a representative for different people in the community. I mean, I think the other thing that's important is to sort of do a self-check about why you're interested in the first place. I mean, my experience with both myself and other people on my board is that those who get involved for a single issue that they really, really feel strongly, they tend not to be as strong a team members because they've only focused on this single issue. And the people who I have seen be the most effective school board members are those that do want to come together as a team, to learn together, to grow together, and help the district do a good job in lots of different ways simultaneously, because that's what the job really entails.
I think what's really important is what's already been said in terms of being part of a team and understanding, even though you're running individually, your authority, your power is only in a collective way. And it also requires a fair amount of balance. You are asked to do what you need to do regarding funding, revenue streams, budgets, But at the same time, you have to balance that, what's in the best interest of the school students in the school district and how they can achieve their best opportunities and achieve students' outcomes. And so it remains constantly a battle of the wits in terms of being able to take that information that you're given from the managing team, the administration, and be able to make a qualified and informed decision.
What has been the most rewarding aspect of being a school director?
Honestly, the most rewarding thing has surprised me, and it doesn't happen at the meetings themselves, but it actually happens in talking to people in the community, because people care a whole lot about their public schools, and yet they don't know very much about how they work or sort of what their needs are. And so I have found it very rewarding to learn what issues people really care about that are maybe not the issues that I cared about personally at the start, but then also help my neighbors sort of understand what's up in the school district and what it really takes to provide public education in a world where it's needed, more than ever in our community.
I do think it's so rewarding to be able to get that information out to the public about what really does go on day in and day out, and what it takes to get this big machine moving. But the most rewarding part of all of this is the opportunity to see the students' successes and to know that top level planning and work that you do as a school director has an impact on what goes on in the classroom. And even though it's indirect, to see the result of all of that work, and even to realize how much your students become a part of the community, to realize how that investment in their education in the early stages of life, really, the ripple effect is immeasurable.
Thank you to our facilitators and panelists who brought all this essential information together. And for those of you who are watching, who may be interested in running for election to your local school board, if you have watched this and still have questions or would like more resources, go to psba.org and search for How to Run for School Board. It's under Resources, and you will find all kinds of information there, including technical considerations for becoming an elected official and many more details about the role. PSBA has been supporting public education and the leaders who govern the school districts across Pennsylvania for more than 125 years. Check out our website and follow PSBA on social media if you'd like to see what we're about.